When I was around 7 years old, my mom and dad started bringing me and my younger sister to a new church. We originally lived in Charleston, West Virginia, but moved when my dad lost his job as a construction worker, probably due to his drinking. I remember for about a week after my dad lost his job, him and my mom would be constantly fight about what they were going to do and how they were going to get our family through this, especially since my mom was pregnant and was due to give birth to my brother in a month or so. My dad walked in one day and said we needed to move, and he knew the answer to all our problems. We picked up everything and moved to the middle of the state to a small town called Clay, West Virginia. It was a change from what we were used to, for sure. West Virginia is made up of a lot of small, sleepy towns inhabited by your stereotypical country yacht hill folk that were either nice as could be or very cold and hating to outsiders. Sadly, it's usually the latter, and Clay was definitely one of these towns. Granted, Charleston isn't the biggest city with around 40,000 people, but by West Virginia standards, that's basically New York City. So this move to the middle of nowhere was definitely an adjustment. The whole way driving over, I remember my dad having a big grin on his face, like he was a kid in a candy store, excited to show us our new lives. Him and my mom obviously did some talking the night before we left, and she seemed a little less apprehensive about the whole situation than when he first dropped the bomb. I should say that where we were moving to wasn't a regular house or apartment in Clay. I now understand that this place was a compound out in the outskirts. Pulling up to the massive fenced-in area, me and my sister looked at each other confused about our new living arrangements. "What is this place?" I asked my parents. "Yeah, Tim, this isn't like what you were telling me last night," my mom said in a confused tone. "I know it looks a little off, Susan, but trust me. I already checked this place out, and you'll love it when you see how nice it is inside," my dad said gleefully. We pulled up to the gate where a man stood outside with a rifle in his hands. Now I know to the average person this would set off huge red flags, but keep in mind that the area we were in it was not that uncommon of a sight to see a man walking with a shotgun or rifle through town, into stores, or having a rack on the back of their pickup truck. The man came to our window, and my dad told the man to let Father Williams know that the Landry family has arrived. The man radioed in and opened the gate for us to drive in. Driving into the compound was like driving into a different world entirely. The main road we drove on was lined with wooden cottages, all closely built, right next to each other on each side. Families were outside having BBQs, laughing and smiling, and kids were running around playing games. This looked almost like the picture-perfect suburban neighborhood. This was far different from the neighborhood that me and my sister were accustomed to, and we were already looking forward to meeting all the other kids around our new home. Passing by what looked like endless rows of copy and paste homes, we parked outside of a giant 4-story concrete building. A tall, pasty white bald man wearing aviator sunglasses and all-white robes stood outside the doors with a large car salesman-like smile and his arms wide open. We open the doors and get out of the car. He walks up to us and introduces himself. "It's a pleasure to meet your beautiful family finally, Tim." Father Williams pulls my father in close for a handshake. "Yes, Steve. Father Williams. This is my loving wife, Susan, and my kids I was telling you about." "Oh, the lovely Susan I've heard so much about. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. Tim talked so highly of you when we met." Father Williams approached my mother and brought her into a deep, embracing hug that lingered on a little too long. "It's nice to meet you, Father. Tim has a lot of good things to say about you. He says that you basically saved his life from the way he was talking you up the other night," my mother says in her southern charm way. She would always put on when meeting new company. "Well, when I met your husband that night, I could just tell that he needed the Lord to step in and bless him with his all-forgiving spirit, and I'm just glad he was willing to accept," he said in his very powerful preaching voice, with his hands held high and head pointed towards the sky. He lowered his hands and his head and fixed his gaze on me and my sister. "Now who are you two wonderful gifts from our Lord?" he said, getting onto one knee to get closer to mine and my sister's level with a very off-putting grin. "I'm Austin. It's nice to meet you, Father Williams," I said, almost as though I was addressing a drill sergeant. "And how old are you, Austin?" He responded with a sultry voice. "I'm 7. I responded, "That's great. And now, you little miss, what is your name?" He lightly poked my sister on the nose while smiling. My sister giggled. "My name's Mary, and I'm 3 years old," she said with her head tilted while swaying back and forth with joy and innocence. "It's very nice to meet you two. I do look forward to getting to know the both of you more. Now, Landry family, I welcome you to our humble land that we like to call Canaan," Father Williams said while taking a bow. "You will be staying in cottage 145. You will see it's a lovely little home just like all our other members in one of the cul-de-sacs off of our main road." He said to my parents, "Thank you, Father, it was a pleasure meeting you," my mother said, looking deeply appreciative into Father Williams' sunglass-covered eyes. "It's my pleasure. Now go settle into your new home and welcome to Canaan," Father Williams said with a cheesy smile, then turned around and walked back into his big concrete church building. The house was decently sized, 3-bedroom, 1 bathroom, small kitchen and living room, but it was really nice compared to our old apartment in Charleston. I remember I was happy to have my own room to myself and didn't have to share it with my brat little sister. But that didn't last long because eventually I had to share it with my brother when he was born. The neighbors were all so friendly, and I remember all of us kids in the compound would meet up at the playground every day after the sermons hosted by Father Williams. There was about 120 of us kids, all of varying ages in the compound, and we would all play games like tag and hide-and-go-seek, and even a game that me and my sister never played called Kill the Sinner. 3 kids would be the sinner, and the rest of the kids playing would chase down the 3 sinners and drag them back to the top of the jungle gym, where they would be made to stand there next to each other, with their arms stretched out and then forced to say, "I'm a sinner, I'm a sinner," then jump from the top of the jungle gym into the sand pit below. The game always ended in laughs, and of course the occasional broken arm from the fall, which wasn't so funny but still good times looking back on it. Years later, when I was 12 years old, my sister 8 years old, and my new brother Caleb was 5. We all adjusted to life in the compound. We never left. He had no need to. My parents would always be outside chatting with the neighbors, having dinners, or grilling and having a few drinks together. Except for my dad, he gave up drinking when we moved to the compound, but still would chat and hang out with the neighbors all the same, while my siblings and the neighbor kids would all hang out and play games ourselves. One day while we were all playing, one of the neighbor's kids named Alex brought up something rather disturbing that even to my 12-year-old self knew something was up. Alex was 6 years old, and this is what he said. "Father Williams brought me into his room earlier to play just me and him." "Lucky, I wish I could go play with Father Williams," my sister said jealously. "What did you and Father Williams play?" I asked, confused why a grown man would want to play a game with a little kid like Alex all alone. "We played rock, paper, scissors, and the loser had to take off a piece of their cloths," he said matter-of-factly. "What?" I said, shocked at the statement. "Yup, I won some of them, but I ended up losing in the end," he said. I was at a loss for words. Hearing this, I didn't even know what to say when he spoke up again. After we played, he told me to have my sister come in and play with him alone. She must have lost cause. She ran out crying after a while, he said bluntly. Alex's sister was 14 years old. "I want to play with Father Williams," my sister said while bouncing a ball. "No," I screamed, and all the kids around us went silent and stared at me. I ran back inside and closed the door to my room behind me. I didn't understand exactly what was going on, but I knew it wasn't right. I told my parents what Alex said, and they looked at each other confused. "Why would that Johnson kid make up such a thing like that?" my dad said, confused. I know, right? He doesn't seem like the kind of kid to make up crazy stories like that. My mom said, he must get it from his father. You know Zach and his old college stories. My dad says, and both my parents share a hearty laugh. I'm serious, Mom and Dad. I say sternly, Austin, I wouldn't think too much about it. The kid is 6, he's probably just making up stories for attention, my dad says, and my mom nods in agreement. But I stammer, go to bed, Austin, it's getting late. My dad says walking away with my mother to their room and closing the door. A few weeks later, after a sermon, my sister, my brother, and me are standing outside talking to a group of kids about meeting up later at the playground and playing Kill the Sinner, when Father Williams walks up to us. Mary, can I talk with you in my room? He asks. Sure, Father Williams. She says excitedly, Father Williams, what do you want to talk with her about? I ask, trying not to sound suspicious. That's a private matter, Austin. Why don't you and Caleb run along now? He says, shooing us away. No, that's okay, Father. I think me and Caleb wanted to say a few quick prayers in the hall first. We did, Caleb said, confused. I elbowed him in the ribs, knocking the wind out of him momentarily. Yeah, dummy Simon, let's go, I say, shuffling him into the prayer hall that was right next to Father Williams' room. Father Williams took my sister into his room, and I knew I needed to stop it as soon as he closed the door. I told Caleb to stay put and that I would be right back. I went the boot and started banging on it. Father Williams opened it a crack just to let his head out. Austin, I told you that me and your sister need privacy for our chat, he said, annoyed. But Father Williams, I really need to talk to you out here. It's an emergency. I said, distraught. It can wait, son. It won't be long. He said, slamming the door in my face. I pounded and kicked on the door for minutes on end. I felt tears building up, and I started crying, knowing that there was nothing I could do to stop this monster. Caleb came running to me asking what was wrong. Just then the door opened, and my sister walked out in front of Father Williams, staring blankly with no expression on her face. The kind of look you see in old World War II documentaries of shell-shocked soldiers. She walked past me and Caleb without saying a word and out the door of the church. Caleb, I think it's your turn now. Would you like to play a little game with me? Father Williams looked at Caleb with a menacing grin on his face. Caleb smiled back and was about to speak when I pushed him away. No, Father. I think I want to play instead, I said, stone-faced, but trembling deep down, looking into Father Williams' eyes beyond his sunglasses. Oh, do you now, Austin? I'm so glad to hear. Why don't you come on in? Caleb, why don't you go run on home? We will have to play some other time. For now, me and Austin are going to play. Father Williams grabbed me by my shoulders and shuffled me into his room and closed the door behind him. I played his game with him. I lost. Walking home after I felt empty. Walking past all the same cookie-cutter homes that lined the main street, I felt alone because no adult believed me. I felt scared because I could only do so much to protect myself and my siblings. And most of all, I used. Used by this wolf in sheep's clothing that had my family and every other family here fooled. Turning on our cul-de-sac, I walk up to my house and see my sister sitting on our front porch. It's late at this point, probably around 9 p.m. She just sat there staring off into the distance. I walk up to her and ask her if she was okay. He touched my privates, Austin, she said blankly. I walked inside, threw myself into bed, and cried hard that night. Beatings and sexual abuse like this went on for years, for all of the kids in the compound, with the parents brushing it off as a child's overactive imagination, and the perfect Father Williams could never be capable of such a thing. Years later, I will always remember the day, because I was 16, about to celebrate my 17th birthday the next day. Father Williams calls an emergency meeting over the intercom system. This has never happened before, and every family met together in the church. Confused banter between families encompassed the large room when after a few minutes the armed guards closed the doors, entering the church and exiting. Father Williams exited his room with 4 more armed guards, 2 at each of his side, walking up to his podium. The room went silent. Brothers and sisters, I regret to inform you that the day that has been foretold that the armies of Babylon will invade our sacred land has come upon us, Father said in a booming voice. Murmurs among the crowd began, and were quickly silenced with Father Williams' next statement. A Judas has been in our congregation the entire time and has told the armies of Babylon of our sacred land that we hold near and dear to our hearts, and I refuse to allow my children to suffer at the hands of this brutal army. I have prepared for us all a final stance. My children believe me when I say, I will gladly fight to the death with this army in the name of God. However, this is simply a battle that cannot possibly be fought when our innocent, young, beautiful children are at risk of being taken and have Lord knows what happens to them. Instead, I have prepared a message for these tyrant armies that you cannot take our children and our pride. We will go out with our heads held high, and we will not be afraid to join our Lord God in our new Canaan within his kingdom. Father Williams holds his arms up high and faces his head toward the ceiling. Women from the kitchen come and hand out paper cups with 2 pills each in them to all the members. God is ready for us. Do not be afraid, my children. I will see you all on the other side. Most people took their pills and helped their children take their pills as well. Some didn't and broke windows trying to escape. The guards shot the ones who did and forced others who were reluctant to take their pills. When it came to my family, my mom and dad sat with smiles and helped my brother and sister take their pills. I know Caleb didn't fully understand what was going on, so he just went with what everyone else was doing. Mary really did believe in Father Williams, even after the abuse she suffered at his hands. As for me, I made up the excuse that I needed to pray before I took mine, and my parents happily allowed me to before saying, "See you on the other side, son," and downing their pills. Bodies started dropping and chaos was still ensuing. I watched as my family dropped and started convulsing and foaming at the mouth, wide-eyed and smiles on their face. I looked around as other families were dropping in similar circumstances and others being gunned down. I was on my knees in prayer, praying to God to get me through this nightmare, praying that my family may enter the kingdom of heaven, and most of all praying that none of this was real. However, the last part of my prayer would go unfulfilled. The level of fear I had at this point was overwhelming. Should I run? Should I fight back? I laid down pretending to be dead among the chaos and prayed again that the guards wouldn't notice I was not actually dead and kill me. In the distance, I hear police sirens and helicopters getting closer and closer. I open my eyes slightly to see everyone in the church dead, with some gunfire coming from the outside. From the guards chasing down would be escapees. The only person left alive in the church is me and the father. He picks up his Bible and starts heading towards the door. I stand up surrounded by the 100s of bodies of men, women, and children around me. The sirens and helicopters grow closer, and the gunfire still rings throughout the night. I stare dead at the father, and he stares back at me and smiles. He falls over the radio for some guards to the church immediately. "You had a wonderful family, Austin. I'm sorry it has to be this way. I truly am," he says softly and mockingly with one hand over his heart. "Fuck you. You're the devil." I scream, "How wrong you are, sweet Austin." He says, smiling, "You're right. You're not the devil. You're a sad, disgusting excuse of a human being, and you will be punished." I say with conviction, "You raped my sister, you raped me, and you killed my family. I look forward to the day I see you again and can inflict the pain you inflicted on so many people, whether it's in this life or the next." The guards burst through the church door and aim their weapons at me. I stare at the father one last time before simply saying, fuck you, and popping my pills. The world starts fading around me. The helicopters sound right above me, and the cops sound like they've breached the compound by now. I watch as the father laughs historically and opens up a hatchway next to his podium, and he walks under it, laughing and smiling at me as I fade to black. I woke up in the hospital 10 months later out of my coma. The doctors tell me I'm the only surviving victim of the mass suicide. Some SWAT team members died in a shootout with the guards before taking them all out. I asked if they found Father Williams, and they told me no. Apparently, he escaped through a tunnel system he had built and was now on the run, and is thought to have done this same thing with at least 3 other cults. It just happens that this one was the largest by far. I'm out of the hospital now after some time with therapist and changing my name to avoid the news from harassing me. I'm alone in this world. I lost my mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, and my friends, but I try not to focus on those feelings. With all the trauma I experienced, I pretty much became numb and still haven't fully processed what happened. I can't focus on that now thought, because now I have a mission. This is a message to Steve Williams, or should I say Eric Bukowski. I know where you are. I know you're down in El Dorado, Arkansas, at a small church preaching right now, recruiting new members to your congregation with your silver tongue. I know this because I've looked over every newspaper and news site online in America until I happened to come across your evil shit. Eating grin, waving to a crowd in a local parade with your loyal brainwashed followers following behind you, posted in a small local newspaper. I'm on my way to you now, Eric, and I promise you, in the name of God, I will kill you.